トビデオ
The late 2000s was around the time I was seriously getting into anime, both in my offline life and in my online life. And even though this was before the time when social media was the all-encompassing sanity-draining abomination that we know it as today, I was still privy to the discourse that was floating around multiple anime communities at the time. Specifically, the discourse around the existence of what was known as moe anime. The word moe is a Japanese slang term used to refer to a feeling of strong affection towards fictional characters, ideally ones that personify youthful, innocent femininity. Read cute anime girls. And moe anime is anime where these types of characters play an extended role. For most of the 2000s, moe anime had been kicking around, usually in budget harem series for the otaku crowd or absurdist rapid-fire comedies. But it wasn't until the mid-aughts when KYOTO Animation came along and decided, what if we actually gave these shows about cute anime girls a decent budget? This began a hot streak of successful big-budget moe anime that would culminate in the monster that was Lucky Star. Lucky Star was a huge turning point for the industry as it showed that anime could just be centered around cute anime girls hanging out and still be a huge success. And while you could argue that Azumanga Daioh did it first a few years prior, that anime was mostly focused on comedy and gags. Lucky Star, while still having a share fair of gags, especially in Lucky Channel, was more focused on painting a cozy, easygoing atmosphere that was more reflective of everyday life. In other words, a slice of life anime.
Which end of a chocolate cornet is the head, the fat end or the skinny end?
This success in turn caused many studios to take notice and create their own moe slice of life shows themselves. And in the late 2000s, anime fans lost their shit. And not in a good way. It's hard to imagine now, but people actually believe that the flood of anime in the late aughts to early 10s centered around an all-female cast of cute anime girls signified the death of anime. A lot of anime that are now considered bona fide classics were dismissed outright because people just saw them as nothing but big-eyed teenage girls just dicking around for 13 episodes. This was exacerbated by these kinds of anime being produced in large quantities, along with being given budgets usually afforded to big action titles. To many people, moe was known as the cancer that was killing anime. Cloyingly cute anime produced for the otaku crowd were fine and dandy when they were niche and easily ignorable, but now that they were being pushed up front and center, that's when it started to become a problem. And while people are justified in not liking moe anime as a matter of personal taste, a lot of criticisms at the time could easily just be boiled down to, it's not like the anime I grew up with. Why can't new anime just be full of action and guns and giant robots and screaming? Why can't it just be like what it was in the 80s and 90s when we didn't have this moe crap? What the hell happened? Well, I hate to break it to you hypothetical strawmen from the late aughts. It turns out that those decades did have that moe crap. Once upon a time, the greatest treasure of heaven known as love went missing. To track it down and retrieve it, God, implied to be the actual for real Christian God, sends his only two daughters, Cherry and Lemon, along with their governess Berry, down to the earthly realm to retrieve it. In their quest to find love, they end up setting up shop on a planet called Earth, and like it so much that they would rather work at their local hamburger joint, Winky Burger, than find the treasure if they could. But the three girls still know that there is a job to be done and continue treasure hunting in their free time. On one such treasure hunt, they find themselves on an exotic planet wrapped up in a plot involving sentient plushies, diabolical intergalactic corporations, and a dashing treasure hunter who suspiciously looks a lot like Lemon's upperclassman crush at school. Is the treasure centered around these three forces the treasure that our heroines seek? And what appears to be the deal with their treasure hunter who emphatically claims not to be their classmate despite looking exactly like him? Released in 1986, Twinkle Heart, or as it's known by its full grammatically incorrect title of Twinkle Heart Don't Let's Reach the Galaxy, is part of the OVA category that rarely if at all gets covered. Well, covered by people not me. OVAs that were less concerned about using the video format as a vehicle for TV unfriendly content, and more as a vehicle for showcasing the chronicles of a cute anime girl or girls. In other words, moe anime, or in this case, moe VA. The standout title of this microgenre was 1985's Dream Hunter Rim, which we've talked about before. The anime, which started out as an early hentai, but soon blossomed into its own little miniature franchise. I bring this up because Dream Hunter Rim and Twinkle Heart are not only two OVAs focused on cute girls exploring exotic locales, they are also two OVAs dreamt up by the same mind, SEIJI OKUDA. Yes, it seems like in the middle of producing more episodes for Dream Hunter Rim, OKUDA decided to also put his money towards another project with a similar conceit. Just replace dreams with treasure, and instead of one cute girl going on adventures, it's three. Now, Dream Hunter Rim was a flawed but enjoyably entertaining little feature that showed itself to just be more than a vehicle for a pretty face to slap on a doujin. Does Twinkle Heart reach a similar pedigree? What info I could find about Twinkle Heart's production was that this was a joint effort by two of Sunrise's support studios, Anime R and Studio Mu. Anime R's involvement is significant as they were the studio that was also producing Rim around the same time period. Twinkle Heart feels a lot more economical in comparison. It feels like it was operating under a similar budget to Rim, but if you actually look at the credits, you can see a lot of staffers pulling double or even triple duty in multiple departments. You can almost picture Okuda strolling around the office and saying, "Hey, once you're done with Dream Hunter Rim, I got something else you could work on." I implied that there were similarities between Twinkle Heart and Rim, but when I actually sat down and watched it, I was completely unprepared for how many similarities there were, particularly in the animation. Like Rim, all the animation is just a solid example of what having a well-founded animation staff in the 80s was like. Explosions smolder, lasers crackle, the action scenes rarely, if at all, take animation shortcuts and actually choreograph them effectively. Even the humor is held by the animation, with characters being allowed to make some hilariously demented faces for the sake of comedy without going overboard. We could probably point this to being the work of animation director Moriyasu Taniguchi. An old school veteran of the 70s, the 80s was the time where Taniguchi established himself as a very gifted director of animation, with credits that include Dream Hunter Rim. Yeah, that seems like where a lot of the similarities come from. Credit can also be given to the principal storyboarder, KATSUMI ENDOU. They have an excellent grasp of dynamism that always keeps the action interesting, as well as some of the visual humor potent. The mechanical animation was one of the first gigs for production IG mainstay KAZUCHIKA KISE. The best example being the final confrontation where the girls had to fight against this super icky looking biomech. It's a super angular machine that has a long tentacle-like tongue as its most defining feature and moves in almost a too organic way. But if Twinkle Heart had an MVP, it would be SAWAKO Yamamoto. She designed the mecha, the characters, and was the animation director specifically for how the characters animate, all on top of being one of the credited key animators. Yamamoto is mostly known for her work in mecha, and that's a talent that really translates well here. She works well in turning ENDOU's energetic posing into some really exciting action set pieces. But I really gotta give it up to those character designs because they are what stick out to me the most regarding Twinkle Heart. It's almost as if the three girls represent the three pillars of cute 80s anime girls design. First, you have Cherry, who strikes a balance between girly and sporty while rocking some grade A floof that is bound to get frizzled. Then you have Barry, whose design is imbued with just a dash of MILF energy to signify that she's the oldest, by 1 year. And finally, there's Lemon. Oh, you better believe there's Lemon. People like to complain that anime girls nowadays are just designed to be perfectly round, featureless dolls with tiny noses, and here's Lemon in 1986 looking smoother and rounder than all those other ladies. A perfect sphere. Some people might find Lemon looking more like a plush toy than the plush toys she hangs around with off-putting, but I think she kinda looks cute. And isn't that what this anime is really all about? Looking cute? Yeah, who would have thought the goal of an anime called Twinkle Heart was to just look cute? I said that Twinkle Heart is an example of 80s moe anime, but the use of moe here is an anachronism because the term wasn't coined at this point in time. A more correct descriptor of the kind of anime that Twinkle Heart is Bishoujo anime. Bishoujo, literally meaning beautiful girl, is a word to describe a character design where a female character is drawn to look attractive to an audience that could be described as mostly male, but we all know that these things aren't always cut and dry. An anime that appears to be focused around an attractive girl or a set of attractive girls are called Bishoujo anime. It's impossible to pinpoint where exactly the Bishoujo anime craze really kicked off, but if I had to wager a guess, it would have to be the success of Rumiko Takahashi's Urusei Yatsura and the popularity of its main character, Lum. By the mid-80s, anime in general really began to lean on having Bishoujo style characters, either as a selling point or a focal point. People would just respond better to a story if one or all of the principal cast were exceptionally beautiful anime ladies. This is what the goal of Twinkle Heart is, to make an exciting, slightly humorous space romp starring cute anime girls, with extra emphasis on the cute. This anime goes the extra mile to make itself incredibly cutesy-wootsy. It's the heart that it proudly wears on its sleeve. One thing I like about it is that our main trio of girls are all just different flavors of endearingly stupid. Cherry has a short fuse to the point that she'll beat up a bunch of kids who call her flats. Lemon is your classic flavor of blonde bimbo. And despite looking the most mature and level-headed of the bunch, Berry feels like the flightiest of the flighty broads. And to head off any potential hot takes, it's pertinent of me to tell you that our main male character, JJ, also carries with him his own flavor of dumbass. It's a quality, but what really hammers home Twinkle Heart's status as a sugary sweet anime is that it has a very innocent tone throughout. There is remarkable restraint in how Twinkle Heart keeps everything at a PG level. There are so many chances where the anime could get a lot more lurid, especially with that tongue robot near the end, and it just bypasses them completely. The only real, what I guess could be called steamy moment in the anime is the scene in the beginning where we briefly see Berry and Lemon in their bras, and a robot gets a nosebleed, or oil bleed. Other than that, this anime really spits in the face of the idea that all 80s OVAs were all sex and violence. It's pure sugary cuteness. Perhaps a little too much. When you take into the account the kinds of anime that were being brought over to the States in the 90s, you could get a pretty good idea why Twinkle Heart wasn't on the shortlist. Imagine manga entertainment trying to sell this.
シュークリームバットさんよ。シュークリームバット？そう、シュークリームが大好きさんでね、命をもらってからもりもり食べたもんだから、こんな風に白くなっちゃったんですって。
It's good that Twinkle Heart knows that its appeal lies in its overall cuteness and really sells itself on that strength. Because if it tried to sell itself on its story, then oh boy, it's in trouble. Not gonna sugarcoat it, Twinkle Heart is a complete mess of an anime story. Probably one of the more unfocused 45-minute OVAs that I have ever watched. I don't want to put this on the screenwriter KENJI TERADA because I know he's done good work elsewhere. He was the main writer for Kimagure Orange Road and wrote the scenario for the first 3 Final Fantasy games. No, if there's someone who could shoulder the blame for this story's sloppiness, it's OKUDA himself. As much as I enjoy Dream Hunter Rim, a big flaw with that anime was that it was common for events in the story to come out of nowhere with little build up and even less resolution. Twinkle Heart has a similar problem. It feels like a first draft of an anime, as if OKUDA was shooting off ideas in the meeting room and having TERADA put it to paper. So Twinkle Heart's story feels very amorphous with no solid foundation. That whole introduction with God, the treasure of love, and his pet white dragon, that never gets brought up again and is only really there for background information that's really not that important to begin with in this story. There's also the anime seemingly switching main characters about halfway through the runtime. You assume that the character of focus is going to be Cherry because she's set up as the leader of the bunch who takes charge of her stupider comrades. But then, once the character of JJ gets introduced, it suddenly becomes a romance between him and Lemon, which takes up a good chunk of the runtime.
それに助けたのは一度君たちに助けられたからだ。いいかい？お宝物を同時に見つければ君たちとは互いに戦い合う運命にあるんだ。
Which becomes extra hilarious once JJ and his trusty space dog end up being killed by the main villainess, and Lemon ends up having a more emotional reaction to the two stuffed animals sacrificing themselves than she does towards her supposed love interest being dead. Speaking of main villainess, aside from her looking like dominatrix Lady Oscar, she left almost zero impression on me. I completely forgot her name and what exactly her ultimate plan was. Something about using this Geppetto guy and his discovery of the essence of life to weaponize giant stuffed animals, I really don't know. And don't expect much in the way of any of the larger plot points getting explained or resolved in a meaningful way. They save the Geppetto guy who uses the last of the essence of life to revive his stuffed animal sidekicks, and when JJ shows up again in his high school upperclassman form, that little plot point is still left a mystery because we still don't know if they are the same character or not. I guess this is because OKUDA had plans to make more episodes of Twinkle Heart, as evidenced by this episode being called a Part 1, but those plans obviously got scrapped once it was clear that Dream Hunter Rim moved VHSs and not Twinkle Heart. With the anime's goal of just being a vehicle for cute anime girls, it feels like the narrative has to take a back seat to all the cuteness, and that's really going to affect how you vibe with this anime. I wouldn't call Twinkle Heart bad. It has great animation and does succeed in delivering cute 80s style anime girls to your TV screen. But there definitely can be only so much cuteness even the average anime viewer can take. The opening song is a happy commercial jingle for a restaurant called Winky Burger, for crying out loud. If you have a low tolerance for this kind of cutesy-poo anime nonsense, then I would suggest staying far away from Twinkle Heart. You will hate it with the fire of 1,000 suns. As for the rest of you, if your interest was piqued by this anime, then I would suggest you go ahead, seek this anime out, and see what you think. But just so you know, Twinkle Heart is a very what you see is what you get anime. I hope this video has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the sugary sweet moe anime have existed longer than the old taku think they have. And guess what? Moe anime has been around for more than 3 decades, and the anime industry is still standing. Anime focused on cute girls doing cute things has not and never will be the downfall of the anime industry. Oh no, there will be plenty of other factors to take that honor.